Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. As you all know that today we are going to start a new chapter for your revision, that is chapter number 9, which is about the transport. So dear, the following topics which we are going to revise today are the question number 1, that is the note on transport, your question number 2, transpiration and mechanism of transpiration, your question number 3, how stomata control transpiration, and your question number 4, the factors affecting the rate of transpiration. Okay, so the first question is a note on the transport. So first we will define the transport, that what is transport. So the movement of molecule into and out of the body or cell of an organism is called transport. And here we are going to explain this transport, that all the living organisms require certain materials for their metabolic processes. The processes which are occurring in the body of living organisms are known as the metabolic processes. So different materials either move into and out of the body, and this movement of molecules of an organism is called transport. So there are basically two types of transport, that is the active and passive transport. So the active transport is the type of transport in which the movement of molecules occurs from the region of lower concentration to the region of higher concentration with the expenditure of energy. Expenditure here means with the use of energy. So the example of such type of transport is the movement of ions which are absorbed by the plant, that is by the process of active transport. Now, the passive transport is the type of transport in which the molecules move from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration without the use of energy. So, this type of transport is known as the passive transport, in which the energy is not required to move the molecule from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. So the example of such type of transport is that the major processes involved in the absorption of water through root hairs and root cells. The importance of transport is that each and every cell of our body needs food and oxygen, and also remove the waste product. So the waste products are the products which are produced during the metabolic activities. So however, every cell is not in direct contact with the external sources to get nutrients and remove waste. So also the cells are not in direct contact with organs, tissues, cells of body where the nutrients are formed and waste are stored. So the system is needed to transport all needs like the oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrient like water, etc., and remove waste from the cell. Okay dears, the oxygen, carbon dioxide and the nutrients are needed to give to all the cells, organ and tissues of the body. So all these nutrients are given to these by a special transport system. So the organisms, whether unicellular or multicellular, plants or animals, simple or complex, have a special transport system in their bodies through which all these oxygen, carbon dioxide and nutrients are transported to all the cells, tissues and organs of the body. So the transport in unicellular organisms, in unicellular we know that they are the simplest organisms, so they don't have a specific organ system for the transport, so they perform this process by a process of simple diffusion and active transport. While in multicellular organisms there are special organ system for the exchange of materials with the environment or within the body. So the transport in plants is facilitated, is done by the vascular bundles. Here the vascular bundles is the xylem and phloem. The transport in animals is facilitated by the blood circulatory system. Okay dear, your question number 2 is about the transpiration and the mechanism of transpiration. So transpiration is defined as the loss of water in the form of vapors from the aerial parts of the plant, that is known as the transpiration. So the mechanism, it occurs through special openings present in leaf epidermis known as the stomata. Stomatas are the small openings present on the leaf surface through which the water is transpired out from the plant body. Okay dears, so some transpiration occur through cuticles present on the leaf. Cuticles are also the small openings present on the leaf, while some type of transpiration occurs through the lenticles which are present on the stems of the plant. They are present on the hardwood of the plants. So in leaves, water is present in xylem tissues, as you all know that, because xylem is responsible for the transportation of water. So then the water moves to the mesophyll cells, to the mesophyll tissues of the leaves. Then the moist walls, from the moist walls, the water evaporates into air spaces of the leaves, and then from these spaces they move towards the stomata and pass outside into the air. Here you can clearly see it in this diagram, dears. The first layer is the upper epidermis, the lower epidermis. So the lower epidermis has a small openings known as the stomata, as you can clearly see it in this picture. So internal structure of the leaf is that in this the green color cells are the mesophyll tissues, mesophyll cells, in which the process of photosynthesis is occurring. So when the water moves from the xylem vessel, here the yellow veins are occurring, showing here, these are the xylem vessels. So from these xylem vessels the water moves into the mesophyll cells, and then from the mesophyll cells into the internal spaces, which you can clearly see over here, and from these spaces the water is transpired out to the stomata. So more than 90% water absorbed by the roots is lost to the atmosphere. Now, dear, your question number 3 is about the how stomata control transpiration. So transpiration occurs through stomata, which allows the water vapors to transpire to the environment. Now the guard cells, so each stomata is lined by two bean-shaped cells called the guard cells. Here you can clearly see it in this picture. Around this stomata, the two bean-shaped structures are known as the guard cells, clear? While the internal space is the stomata, the internal small opening is the stomata. So only epidermal cells which contain chloroplast. These are the only epidermal cells which contain the chloroplast. Okay, dears. So how guard cells regulate opening and closing of stomata? So guard cells help in closing and opening of stomata, because stomata opens and closes when turgor pressure of guard cells changes. Whenever the amount of water changes, so the opening and closing of stomata occurs. So stomata opens when guard cells turgid, while it closes when the guard cells become flaccid. Turgid means when they become swell up with the water, and flaccid when they become shrink down. Okay, so in sufficient supply of water, the stomata remains open. During the deficiency of water, the stomata close down, and during the daytime, the photosynthesis process is occurring, the glucose is preparing, so the solute concentration remains high in the guard cells, therefore the water moves in and become turgid. So the guard cells becomes turgid during the process of photosynthesis, clear? So in turgid state, inner walls of the guard cells moves outward and stomata opens. During evening, the glucose concentration in guard cell falls down because the process of photosynthesis decreases down. So due to this, water also moves from guard cells to and loose turgor. The inner sides touch and each other, and stomata closes down. So the stomata in desert plants, there, as you all know that in deserts there is a very scarcity of water, there is a very little amount of water. So in this type of plants there are very few or no stomata to minimize the rate of transpiration, dears. As you can clearly see it in this, the open stomata and the closed stomata, when the guard cells are turgid, so they move outward and the inner opening, the inner stomata is open. And in the second picture you can clearly see when they become shrink, so they touches to each other and they closes down, the stomata closes down, the cells become flaccid. Your question number 4 is, dears, about the factors affecting the rate of transpiration. So there are several factors which are affecting the rate of transpiration. Here are some given below, that is the light, temperature, humidity, soil moisture, wind, number, and distribution of stomata. So dear, the first factor is the light, so which directly controls the opening and closing of stomata, because when there is a strong light, so the stomata opens and the transpiration becomes high. When the light is low, the transpiration slows down or stopped, and when there is a darkness, so stomata get closed, stopping the transpiration. Dear, the second factor is the temperature. So temperature also affects the rate of transpiration, because the high temperature, with the increase in high temperature, the evaporation will increases. So when the evaporation increases, so it means that the transpiration will increases, because evaporation is the simply the movement of water from the plant body in the form of vapors, and transpiration is the same thing, in which the water are evaporated from the plants. Clear, dears? So when the temperature is low, the transpiration is also low. Okay, dears, the third factor is the humidity. Humidity is simply known as the presence of water in air, that is known as the humidity. In Urdu you can call it nami, कि जब नमी ज़्यादा होती है. क्लियर? So rate of transpiration is inversely proportional to humidity. Why is that so? We will study it now. Because when there is low humidity, there are less water vapors in atmosphere. So what will happen here? The rate of water vapor loss from leaf is high, because to maintain the humidity in atmosphere, the water vapors will loss in the high amount. And when there is already a high amount of vapors present in the environment, so the vapors from the plant body will not evaporate, so they will remain in the plant body. So during the higher humidity, the rate of transpiration becomes low. Now your fourth factor is the soil moisture. So what is soil moisture? The water present in the soil is called the soil moisture. So if more water is present, more absorption will take place and transpiration increases. So the fifth factor is the wind. And what is wind? Air in motion is called the wind. When the air is still, so we do not call it a wind, but when it started to move, so we will call it a wind. So the moving air is known as the wind. So what will happen when the air is not moving? Yes, so if the air is not moving, the water molecules transpiring out of the stomata remains in the surrounding. They will not move from their specific place. It stops further water molecules to come out, and rate of transpiration is reduced. The vapors present on the leaf surface will remain on the leaf surface, because if the air is not moving, these vapors will not be move out or replaced from the leaf surface. So there will be no place for the another water molecules to come out of the plant body. So when the air is moving, the transpiration will be high. So the transpired water is rapidly removed from the leaf surrounding, and there is a space for more water vapors to come out of stomata. As I have told you earlier, when the air is not moving, this process will stop. So when the air starts moving, so the water vapors present on the leaf surface will be removed from the leaf surrounding, will be removed from the leaf surface, and there will be more space for the more water vapors. So dears, the sixth factor is the number and distribution of stomata. So the number of stomata also affect the rate of transpiration. For example, if we say that a leaves with a more surface area, if the leaf surface area is higher or larger, so the more surface area will be having a more stomata. So if there are more number of stomata, so it means that there will be the higher rate of transpiration. The higher the surface area, more number of stomata will be present on the leaf surface, and there will be a higher rate of transpiration. So if the leaves are not having a higher surface area, they are in the form of narrow blade, so they will be having less area, thus decreases transpiration. So the greater number of stomata, higher will be the transpiration. Dears, inland plants. Inland plants, the number of stomata is greater on lower leaf surface than upper surface. More transpiration occurs from the lower surface. Basically, the number of stomata are higher in number in the lower surface of the leaf, while on the upper surface, the number of stomata are decreased than the lower surface.